God of War for the PlayStation 4 has easily become one of my favorite games of all time. I pretty much love every single thing about this game, the way it plays, the combat, the characters, the story, the environments. Everything about it is just fantastic. And so, of course, I have to make a video talking about my thoughts on it and why I love it so much. So, of course, a disclaimer, I have completed the game, I have finished it, so if you guys haven't finished it yet or you don't want to hear really any spoilers, probably not a good idea to watch this video. I will be talking a little bit about the game, just some different things that happen, and some of the kind of the bigger plot points. So if you guys don't want to hear about any of that stuff, I suggest clicking away right now. But for those of you who are still here, let's go ahead and dive right into God of War. So this time around, Kratos is located, I believe, in Scandinavia somewhere, and he is now sort of surrounded by Norse mythology as opposed to the Greek mythology that was, sort of the main theme in the previous God of War games. And this God of War is very different, although it still has a lot of sort of the same things that made the previous God of War games so great. And I love this new setting. I love the whole Norse mythology going on. I love the new creatures that are around, the new gods that are around, that sort of plague Kratos and Atreus on their journey to spread Kratos' wife's ashes. And it's just such a great setting, a great lore. I love everything about it. It's just so unique, so fresh. I don't really know much about Norse mythology, so playing through this game and sort of learning about all these different things was really interesting. What's really cool about the whole Norse mythology lore is that you really come across a lot of different things throughout your journey, and you learn a lot about Norse mythology. Some of this comes through when you discover different shrines throughout the world that have sort of murals on them, and Atreus will sort of let Kratos know, what that mural or what that shrine is saying. Just some of the different stories that go along with it is just really interesting to hear. And then once Mimir sort of accompanies you on your journey, he's the talking head that Kratos has attached to his belt. Once Mimir joins the journey, he tells a lot of different stories about Norse mythology, and it was just so interesting to hear about what Norse mythology is all about, the different characters that sort of are in that setting and in that lore, and it was really interesting to hear that. So one of the cool things again about the story is that it's kind of presented to you in an open world fashion, even though the game is very linear. So let's say that you have an objective, you know where you have to go, but you can actually go off and just sort of explore on your own. You can boat around the Lake of Nine and just sort of explore all the different islands that are there. And once you have Mimir, he will tell not hundreds, but probably dozens of stories in that boat as you're just, traveling around the Lake of Nine. And he will tell so many different stories about gods, goddesses, giants, other creatures in Norse mythology, and it's just really interesting to hear. And oftentimes you'll find yourself getting to your destination and not actually, getting out of the boat to, do your objective or whatever the case may be, because you want to sit and you want to listen to that story that Mimir is telling Atreus and Kratos. And it's just very interesting. It's really profound, really unique way to tell this story, and just have Norse mythology and just the universe of this game presented to you. So the storytelling in this game is absolutely fantastic. I love it. Every character feels like they're very important to the story. And one other really cool thing about telling the story too is the entire game is basically one continuous shot. There's really not any loading screens to be seen throughout this game, which is mind-blowing to think about. A game of this scale, a game of this vast environments, there's like no loading screens. That's insane to think about, but Santa Monica Studio did such a fantastic job of it. Of course, there are some instances where loading is kind of occurring within the background when you use the realm travel room to travel to different realms. That could potentially be seen as a loading screen. When you fast travel anywhere, that could potentially be seen as one too. But those loading screens don't ever feel like you're being taken away from the story. Constantly you feel immersed throughout this entire journey, which is very important to do in a video game. You absolutely want to make sure that you're immersed in it, that you understand what's going on, that you don't lose that immersion, so you're continually engaged with the story, engaged with the characters. And Santa Monica Studio did a fantastic job with that. I absolutely love that. It was such a great way to tell this story. It's just really fantastic. So couple of other plot points that I thought was really interesting. Halfway through, I guess about halfway through, and again, this is a major spoiler, so if you still haven't really clicked away yet, probably a good time to do so. But one of the really cool things that I saw that I knew they were in the game, but I didn't know they would play such a major role, and that was Kratos actually gets the Blades of Chaos, and he pulls them out of storage and he uses them. And that blew my mind. It was unfortunately spoiled for me a little while before I got to that part, so I knew that they were in the game, but I just thought it was, just like a little Easter egg. I didn't really know that Kratos was going to be able to use them and actually upgrade them and have different skills for them. That was insane. So getting them for the first time and stepping out of your house and just taking down all these different enemies with the Blades of Chaos was just mind-blowing. That was nuts. Because I'm a huge fan of the God of War series. I've played every single one. I love them to death. It's a fantastic, fantastic series. And to have those Blades of Chaos back after so many years and just using them to take out all these enemies was absolutely insane. It was such a cool part of the story. And, they of course play into, how Kratos has sort of changed as a person. Throughout most of the game you use the Leviathan Axe, which in itself is a fantastic weapon. It's a really great addition to the God of War series, and I loved using it. And sort of getting the Blades of Chaos back can show you just how sort of different this game is compared to the previous ones, but also how similar it is too. It's just a really unique thing, a really unique way to have these two sort of weapons together, and how you can sort of use them together and sort of change up your playstyle and different things like that. Certain enemies you can't use the axe on, so you'll have to use the Blades of Chaos on them, and it was just such a really great thing when it came to the different weapons and how you can upgrade them. And when it comes to upgrading them, there's tons of different skills that you can get with the axe and the Blades of Chaos. There's different abilities that you can unlock, different attacks that you can use, and some of them from the Blades of Chaos actually return from previous God of War games, which is really cool to see. Like the can't think of them right now. I think Tartarus Rage is probably the one that I use quite a bit, and that one was in the previous God of War games too. So to see that return was really cool. To see it used in sort of this new way, in this new setting, was fantastic. So it's really cool to sort of switch between the axe and the Blades of Chaos at any given point and just sort of change up your playstyle. It's really, really awesome. So it's kind of cool that the two weapons are in the game, but it's also interesting to think about how Kratos has changed as a person, but he still has he's become more emotional, he's become more grounded, he's definitely become more wise, that's for sure. So kind of having that along with the Leviathan axe brings about how he's a different character, but then even when using the axe, he still has that sort of same brutality to him where he's just going to destroy everything in his path. And when you get the Blades of Chaos, it sort of brings about that same sort of feeling again. So it's really cool how the two are just kind of intertwined between each other. And I thought Santa Monica Studio did a really fantastic job of that. It's really cool to see. So back to sort of combat, it feels very meaty, it feels very weighted, feels a little bit, I guess, slower paced from the previous games, but it feels a little bit more methodical as well. Which is really interesting to see. So when you've got the axe, you've got your basic light attacks, you've got your heavy attacks, and you've got your special runic attacks, which can bring about different effects, different damage and things like that. And throughout the game, there's tons of different ones that you can unlock, either from chests or just sort of upgrading your weapon, I believe anyway. And these different runic attacks can bring about different ways to take out enemies, obviously, and each one has their own abilities, cooldowns, different things like that. And it's really cool to see, which ones do what, and just sort of experimenting between them. So again, sort of that same combat of God of War from the previous games is still here, and this one's just tweaked a little bit, but still feels familiar, which is awesome. And the same can be said with the Blades of Chaos too. There's different things that you can upgrade, different abilities you can unlock, and different runic attacks that you can use as well. So that's sort of the basic premise of combat, but everything just feels very important. It feels like every hit matters, which is very good in an action game. It's very important. It's just really great to see how Santa Monica Studio really did that. So also in terms of combat, Atreus plays a really big part in combat as well. He uses his arrows quite a bit throughout combat. He'll either do things himself, he'll jump on enemies, try to strangle them, try to attack them in some way, maybe stab them with his knife or something like that. But you can actually use him in combat yourself. You can actually aim at certain parts on the enemies. You can press the square button and people fire some arrows. You either got stun arrows or shock arrows, or I guess light arrows and shock arrows, which do different things in terms of the enemy, or to the enemy, that I should say. Sorry, I'm getting kind of tongue-tied right now. But you can use him in a lot of different ways, especially with the arrows, and you can actually hold the square button as well and use, I guess, different summons attacks. So probably my favorite one is to bring about this electric murder of crows and just sort of stuns all the enemies in the area, and then you can kind of just run up to them and just wail on them with the axe or the blades, and it's just very cool. It's a really unique way to sort of use him. And you know, this has been compared to you know, some other games that have companion characters. You know, probably the most prominent, I think, would be The Last of Us, with Ellie sort of accompanying Joel on his journey, you know, their journey throughout The Last of Us. And I think Atreus kind of does the same thing with Kratos in God of War, where, you know, he's there but he's useful. You don't really have to watch over him. You don't really have to take care of him. He can take care of himself. And I think for this game that was really important to do that, and I think it sort of adds a little bit to the story and adds a little bit to the combat, which was really cool to see. So along with combat, really great combat and a really awesome story, you've got tons of different upgrades, like I briefly mentioned. Not just with your weapons, with your armor as well. So you can upgrade your armor, you can buy different pieces of armor, not only for Kratos, but for Atreus as well, which all have different abilities and techniques, and just sort of different things like that. You can equip different talismans, which again sort of equip different techniques and different things that you can use, and they all feel very different. They all seem very helpful, and I really kind of like that aspect to it as well. It kind of gives God of War more of an RPG kind of feel. Instead of just like a regular average, well, I shouldn't say average, but just a regular, you know, hack and slash adventure. There's a little bit more to it when it comes to the armor and upgrading and different things like that. So that's really cool to see as well. But yeah, this game is just fantastic. I love the relationship between Kratos and Atreus. At the very beginning of the game, they're kind of distant from each other. They don't really know how to interact with each other, but towards the end, they sort of different things rub off on them. So Kratos at the beginning is sort of very blunt, to the point, kind of a no-nonsense kind of guy, which is what he's always been. But at the end, he sort of becomes a little bit more compassionate, which Atreus has always been throughout the story. And then kind of at the end, you know, Atreus kind of has that sort of same mentality as Kratos at the beginning, is that, you know, I'm gonna, you know, help all these people, but I want something in return. So it's kind of unique to see how each of their personality types rubs off on one another, and it's just a really great way to see all these characters really grow from one another. It's just fantastic. Speaking of characters, there's also some really cool supporting characters. The goddess Freya makes an appearance, and she's fantastic. She helps Kratos and Atreus kind of early on in the journey, and then towards the end some things happen and she's just not happy with them at all, which I guess could be kind of understandable, but she's really cool. She's a really great character, and I hope we see her more in, you know, these upcoming God of War games, if there is going to be some, which I highly should assume there will be, so that'll be really cool to see. Baldur, played by Jeremy Davies, who was in Lost as well as Justified, is fantastic as Baldur. It was such a cool thing to see him when the game started and I saw his name in the credits. I was like, oh man, who's he gonna play? And he, you know, came out as the stranger, as sort of at the beginning of the game, and I immediately recognized him. He was fantastic. I loved his character. He played it so well, and Baldur was just a fantastic character who just was insanely good. So very cool to see that. A couple of characters that I wish would be in the game a little bit more were Magni and Modi, who I believe were Odin's sons. I think that's right. Either his sons or nephews, I can't really remember, but they were really cool. They were actually a boss battle that you had to fight them. You had to fight Magni and Modi at the same time. They were just really cool characters. I wish they were kind of in the game a little bit more, just so we could kind of get to know them or experience them a little bit more, but they were really cool characters as well, really fantastic. That boss fight was really awesome as well. Mimir is probably one of my favorite supporting characters from any game. Just his voice actor was fantastic. just his personality was really cool. And again, he told all those, he tells stories about Norse mythology throughout almost the entire game once he accompanies you on your journey. It was just really cool to see. And just his character was so interesting. He knows so much about this area, about so much about these characters, and it was just really cool to have him along for the ride. Just really cool characters. So tons of different characters throughout the game, all of them very unique, very interesting. You sort of feel like they're real people, aside from having mythical powers and all these different types of things. But very unique characters. You really sort of connect with them in a lot of different ways, and it's very cool to see that. So along with the characters, the environments, there's tons of different environments to go through as well. You've got Midgard, which is sort of the main central area, and around Midgard you've got tons of other little smaller sections that you can go to with tons of different enemies, side quests as well, so it's really cool to just explore Midgard. And along with Midgard, there's a bunch of other different realms that you can travel to. There's Alfheim, which is sort of this, can't really explain it, I don't really know, but just a very unique place, very lush forests, just really, clean, friendly-looking environment. Of course, it's anything but friendly, but really interesting to just sort of walk around there and explore things. You've got Helheim, which is basically Hades, basically the bad afterlife in terms of Norse mythology. So everything is cold, it's desolate. There's sort of this ominous green aura throughout all of Helheim. It's really interesting to see. You've got Niflheim, which is sort of this weird gauntlet area in the game where you can kind of go around and just take out different enemies and kind of upgrade some different things. There's some armor and stuff that you can get there as well. And then Muspelheim, which is like this fire and brimstone kind of volcanic looking area that has different trials that you can complete as well, which again can unlock different abilities, some different items, different things like that. So lots of different and just really cool environments that you can go around to. There's a lot of different variety, which is really interesting and really cool to see. Sorry about that, my phone ran out of storage, so that was fun. But anyway, like I was saying, I'm sure there's some stuff that I've missed, while talking about this game, some other stuff I want to talk about, but as a whole, for right now, God of War is a fantastic, fantastic PlayStation 4 game, and if you guys have a PlayStation 4 and you don't have this game, I highly recommend you check it out, especially if you're a fan of the God of War series, and especially if you just want to know anything about this game. Absolutely check it out. It's phenomenal. The story, the combat, the graphics, the sound, the environments, everything about it is amazing, and I cannot wait to see what Santa Monica Studio has in store for the next installment in this legendary series. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching my thoughts on God of War. What are some of your guys' thoughts? Do you love the game? Do you hate the game? Have you never played a God of War game before? Let me know what you guys think. It would be awesome to hear from you guys, and I really want to know what you guys think about this game. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you all in the next video.